Hi, I'm Isabelle Refutation, and I'm going to be countering Brandon Skull's claim that corporal punishment used on adolescents is more harmful than it is helpful. In his argument, his secondary claims are that the parents that use corporal punishment create aggression in their children, that corporal punishment distracts children from learning, and that punishment can create distance in the parent-child relationship. So for the first claim that parents using corporal punishment creates aggression in their children, he claims that 94% of parents use corporal punishment on 4 to 5-year-olds. However, he does not say where he got that statistic or how corporal punishment is defined in that context. So I'm not really sure how much we can take that to be true. He also brings up the point that adults are smarter than children, which most of us can assume, but he does not explain the bearing on that case or how that creates aggression in children. And in this section, he doesn't. He also claims that corporal punishment has been proven to be ineffective in deterring children from their actions. However, he does not provide specific evidence to back this up. And he does not show a lot of solid evidence that this actually creates aggression in children. In the second section, he claims that punishment distracts children from learning, and he claims that inducing fear is the primary goal for physical punishment, but he does not provide evidence or examples to show that this is true. And the main study that he cites in this section by Akemi Tomoda of Harvard Medical School about the underdevelopment of gray matter in the brains of children exposed to corporal punishment. His speech was about corporal punishment such as spanking. However, the study was about harsh corporal punishment, which they specified meant that that included objects, the use of objects in punishment, which is a huge difference actually, because that can be the difference because that can cause it to cross the line into abuse, which is illegal and is a lot more significant. This report also claims that while they did find a correlation between lesser development of gray matter and corporal punishment and harsh corporal punishment, they are not certain of a causation and think that it might actually be that the underdevelopment of gray matter might lead them to be put in situations where they're more likely to be exposed to harsh corporal punishment. And his third claim, that punishment can create distance in a parent-child relationship. He claims that adults are prone to getting carried away in punishments directly due to higher stress levels, but does not provide evidence for how he came to this conclusion that stress is the primary factor in causing adults to go overboard in punishment, or that adults generally get carried away in punishments. He also cites a statistic from the Department of Health and Human Services that 12,500 children were victims of physical abuse, significant enough to have them go to the hospital, but he does not cite that anywhere in his bibliography, and he does not show any specific examples of how this creates distance in a parent-child relationship. In addition, 2 of his sources are from the Notice Bank website, and the first one was Influence of Corporal Punishment on Crime. It's really a weird article that doesn't really stick to the topic that it claims, and is written by someone called Tom Johnson, who does not provide any evidence to his authority on this subject, and does not really cite anything for his writings. And the other one is called The Sexual Dangers of Spanking in Children, which cites several studies, but does not actually, claims to cite several studies, but doesn't actually say where they were conducted or how they were conducted. So it's just listing a bunch of statistics without evidence, and so there's not a So the level of research wasn't exactly great on this topic. So while he does have a point that corporal punishment does have negative effects on children, he makes several errors in his sources and his reasoning, which make this point difficult to be accepted.
All right, Isabelle, most of your arguments are presses on the evidence, and I think there's some reasoning challenges in here that you could make in addition, and there's one or two that you do make, but you need some evidence of your own to support those challenges, and I think that the absence of any information for your side or that applies to these arguments is a little bit problematic. For instance, here's an interesting idea. Let's take the information that you got on the first point that says 94% claim to be using corporal punishment on their 4 and 5-year-olds, and then let's go down to the 12,500 victims who are hospitalized, and let's just do some statistics here. If it's 94%, well, that's how many people who have children. My guess is it's a substantial number, maybe 100 million, 150 million that we're dealing with here. And then let's go down to that number, 12,500 victims who are hospitalized. The percentage of people, that are being hospitalized as a result of corporal punishment seems to be relatively small if that many people are using corporal punishment. I mean, let's just look at it a big picture kind of issue here. That seems like it would be something that jumps out at you and you ought to be talking about. But in essence, your arguments are, all presses. They're not bad presses, but they're the kind of thing that you could say immediately after the speech that you just heard. You could say, well, they don't really define what constitutes corporal punishment. Some of the research really is based on the use of an instrument. So in some places people are being paddled, in some places they're being spanked. Well, does it matter? How important is that difference? Is spanking something that's a little bit more acceptable, especially with young kids, as an immediate deterrent, as opposed to the long-term deterrent of paddling a 10 or 12-year-old or punching a 15-year-old in the face? I mean, I don't know what the criteria are for these forms of corporal punishment that are being talked about. I think that you've got a good general press on that, but you don't have any information on your own to suggest that these things are problematic or that there's anything that's acceptable about any of these kinds of things. Like I said, I do think that you suggest that abuse is illegal, and so that's clearly something that is potentially problematic. And if somebody is being hospitalized, that doesn't sound like it's corporal punishment. That sounds like it's abuse. But you need to be able to draw a distinction between those things. And the advocate doesn't draw the distinction. You don't draw the distinction, so I'm not sure what inference I'm supposed to be making on these particular points. Your challenge on the advocate's evidence, especially on that third point, suggests, look, the article's weird. I don't know why you think it's weird. The author doesn't have any qualifications. I do think that that's probably relevant to that point. But the argument, the last argument that says, look, they cite a bunch of studies, but they don't tell you what those studies are. They just give you the statistics. That the advocate failed to cite the sources, I think that's an important point. But that you don't have any information about those sources yourself suggests that you didn't do any additional research on that point, and that's an underwhelming response to the argument. So, if you were standing up and giving an immediate response, I'd say that was okay. But given that you had a couple weeks to get ready, I just feel like it's an underwhelming response, and there needs to be something more. All right, thank you.